There's a wonderful documentary about Buddha on Netflix. Like Gandhi, Buddha almost killed himself several times fasting and praying for miracles and enlightenment. In fact, it was through the compassion of a woman who found him under a Bodhi tree, unable to move for lack of energy, almost starving himself to death, and she gave him some food to eat, which saved his life. He found enlightenment through the compassion of a woman. And according to his story, he met the God of the Old Testament, the same God. For those who believe that Christ is the God of the Old Testament, if Buddha did meet Christ as the God of the Old Testament, that would make him more Christian than most Christians I know. He was born in Nepal, between current Asia and India. At the time between 563 and 480 BC, unlike Muhammad, Buddha was raised as a prince in a palace, or at the very least, he was the son of the governor of the Shakya Republic. I've heard some with a Buddhist background say Christ is the Sun Buddha, and some say he is the Sun God and the Sun. And the Son is another name for Christ, the Son of God. And that is interesting to hear. Who really knows? One misconception is that it's based on idol or statue worship. In the beginning of Buddhism, there were no statues at all, just the footprint of Buddha, representing what Buddha left behind. Within the footprint of the Buddha were placed 32, 104, or 132 distinctive symbols or marks of the Buddha, representing principles or laws. Nothing has influenced art over the years more than art. And it wasn't until the arrival and influence of Roman and Greek art that statues began to become a part of Buddhist culture. Another of the most common misconceptions many Christians have had about Buddha is that Buddha set himself up to be God. But Buddhism teaches we are all Buddhas, but our choices still determine if we can pull ourselves out of the mud and blossom like the lotus flower. How's that for bittersweet? We must pull ourselves out of the mud to blossom like the lotus flower. The words bodhisattva and Buddha are also used to describe someone who is becoming an ascended master or a prophet. And in their culture, they view many of the Buddha masters as having reached the highest realms of heaven, which many view as achieving a godlike status. And Christ taught we can become one with him as he is one with the Father. Hopefully this will help people better understand. Buddhist, Hindu, and yogi masters practice reaching the higher realms of heaven, but none of them ever claimed to be the Most High God. Most of the current Buddhist teachings were written about 400 years after he died, which was closer to around the time of Christ. And it's amazing to discover how much Buddha and Christ actually have in common, both from what they taught and did. They both get accused of blasphemy or inappropriately worshiping lots of gods. Psalms 82, verse 6. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. In the book of John, Christ had just walked into the temple in Jerusalem, and even Christ had been accused of blasphemy And the Jews picked up stones to stone him over this same issue. John chapter 10, verse 34. Jesus answered them, "Is it not written in your law, I said, ye are gods?" Again, to me, this just adds perspective to the commandment. Exodus chapter 20, verse 3. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. The first of the 10 commandments God gave Moses. If we can't even understand the first thing God asked us to do, I think we're in trouble. The key word, before, has either been deleted in some people's minds or misinterpreted as no other gods other than me. But if it meant that there were no other gods, it would say it that way. And I'm using the King James Version because the following versions are even more subject to misinterpretation, especially where some of the finer points have already been misinterpreted. For one thing, this means don't put ourselves before or above, or follow other gods before or above the Most High God. All of this also adds perspective for the 2 great commandments Jesus Christ taught. Love God and love your neighbor. In my opinion, it's an establishment of the chain of command and order of leadership. A lot depends on our point of view and our paradigm. Most people are right from their point of view. So it's time to expand our view, our paradigm.